Hello, listeners. Welcome to Ideas, Innovative Dialogues in Educational Approaches and Scholarship podcast series in the Research Hub at the Faculty of Education, Simon Fraser University. This is Shaila, your host. I'm very happy to welcome Amanda Wallace, an EAL Consultant, and Eilidh Singh, an Educational Developer at SFU's Center for Educational Excellence for our today's episode. I would like to acknowledge that all Ideas podcasts are recorded at Simon Fraser University, whose three campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam nations. Here is a little bio for today's speakers. Amanda Wallace, an EAL consultant at SFU's Center for Educational Excellence, collaborates with faculty to design linguistically responsive curricula and teaching methodologies. She provides specialized guidance on developing linguistically accessible materials and assists in crafting assignments, exams, and other resources to ensure linguistic clarity. Eilidh Singh is an educational developer with an English as an additional language specialization in the inclusive teaching team at SFU's Center for Educational Excellence, where she works with a flexible, evidence-based lens to facilitate EAL support for all faculty and TAs. She has supported multilingual and mono and multilingual instructors and students over the last few decades in a variety of roles. Their full bio will be available on our webpage. Hello, Amanda and Eilidh. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi,
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're delighted to be here. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you. So, Amanda and Eilidh, you have designed a workshop titled Linguistically Responsive Classroom, which is now offered by SFU's Center for Educational Excellence, or CEE as we know it. This is a unique workshop, and we would like to know more about it. So yeah, if you could tell us more about this workshop, how you designed it, and a little bit of background, that would be great.
Okay, thank you so much. We are always very happy to talk about our work. The way that the series came about, because it's actually an instructor series, and the way it came about was our team of EAL consultants is a team of two. We're quite small, and we're part of the inclusive teaching team at the Center for Educational Excellence, as you said in your intro to us. And part of our mandate is to support faculty with supporting multilingual students. And we know that SFU is very lucky to have a diverse student body, diverse encompassing culture, language, ability, backgrounds, interests, and so on in their student body, which is a real asset to the university. And when we came together in January of 2020, we started to think about ways that we could really support instructors in a robust and evidence-based way. And coincidentally, at the same time, we came upon the work of Han Gallagher and Burke from the University of Dayton, Ohio. They had written a paper about faculty development for teaching international students, and they had developed a seminar series, and we read it and were inspired by it. And so we decided to pilot our own instructor series, offering ways in which instructors could access linguistically responsive pedagogy in a way that met where they were in terms of their teaching experiences and their goals. So maybe, Amanda, you could talk a little bit about the structure of the series.
Right, sure. Thanks, Eilidh. So the series in its current form consists of 6 90-minute facilitated group seminars. We generally hold them once a week, and it's a mixed mode format. So the first and last session of the series is held in person, and the middle sessions are held online, and that's just to be flexible with trying to meet people's schedules and their obligations and so on. And it's open to essentially any instructors at SFU, so including grad students, and we have had some staff members join us in the program as well. And so they really they're working together as a cohort, and they explore a number of things, applicable theory, practical examples to enhance multilingual student support. And it really aligns to what we're trying to do is make our classrooms more inclusive and accessible for our multilingual students, and really working with instructors in whatever role they are interacting with students in giving them practical strategies with which they can design their curriculum and identify appropriate pedagogical strategies.
Yeah, part of what we're trying to do is some of your previous podcast guests have touched on this. We're attempting to shift the dial on deficit-oriented discourses and pedagogical practices that see students who speak English as an additional language sort of as remedial, rather than really resourceful, experienced learners with meaningful contributions to make. And at the same time, we do understand the very real challenges for all instructors here. Both Amanda and I have got many years of classroom experience in higher education, and we really want to support instructors in ways that will impact how they teach their disciplines, because they're the experts in their disciplines, so that they reach all of the diverse students in their class in ways that really draw on the assets that multilingual students and all students bring. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have run 3 iterations of the instructor series so far, and we're just beginning the early stages of planning for our 2025 iteration. So we're very happy to talk about the series.
That's fascinating. Amanda, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
In terms of, I think it's very broadly, I think our kind of overarching goal of the series, as Eilidh alluded to, is really shifting the mindset of instructors around multilingual students, and to see the linguistic repertoires, if you will, that students bring into the classrooms as one that enriches the classroom experience and facilitates students learning in the classroom. And so how we go about, and we feel this is one way, this series is one piece of shifting that mindset, on top of some of the other work that we do outside of the series. We call that our constellation of support around supporting faculty to better support multilingual students. But we feel this series maybe has the most direct impact, the biggest impact on faculty, because of the way we've designed it and the outcomes and the practical exemplars of artifacts that they come out of the series with.
And maybe we can talk a little bit about what they actually do in the series to give listeners an idea of what's involved. So the people who are interested in joining the series come from a wide variety of disciplines. And what we do together is we first establish current knowledge of language, identity, positionality. We explore applicable theory. We offer practical examples, as Amanda said, to enhance multilingual student success. We look at things like reducing linguistic complexity without really reducing the robustness of the actual content, and ways that instructors can do that. And that's always something that I think participants respond very positively to, because it allows them to see how they can play a role in teaching not only disciplinary language, but language in general as part of their role as an instructor in the disciplines. So we look at course materials, we look at pedagogy, we talk about language barriers that may be present that are, they're not there deliberately, but they're there nonetheless. And we discuss ways that instructors can mitigate those language barriers. We often draw on the principles of the Universal Design for Learning framework, talking about designing so that those barriers aren't there in the first place in order to reach as many students as possible, not just multilingual students, but particularly multilingual students with a focus on language. And one of the great things that we do in this series is that we invite participants to think of an artifact. This might be something that they are thinking of creating, or it may be an existing resource for their class, such as a handout for TAs, or it might be an assignment, or in some cases, some participants have ambitious plans to use the artifact as a stepping stone to further course development and course redesign. So we show them different ways that their artifact that they're working on can be expanded and can springboard into other ways that they can apply a linguistically responsive lens to all of the work that they're doing in their teaching. We also offer during the series a one-on-one consultation with participants to really get into the particulars of their artifact. And we invite colleagues from across SFU, past participants, and our colleagues working in the discipline of EAL to come and talk to the participants about their past experiences, about projects that they've worked on before, and so on, so that instructors can really see that small things that they do can have really quite a big and profound effect, not only for them, of course, but for their students as well. Amanda, maybe you want to talk about your work with the colleague that you worked on to develop the PILA?
Right. So I worked, I guess an example of an artifact would be a post-entry language assessment. I collaborated with a faculty member in applied sciences, and they came to me with concerns about their multilingual students' reading abilities and how, there were a number of reasons this came to surface, if you will. There were, engineering is a field that is very, has to align itself to outside accreditation bodies. They have to demonstrate evidence that students have competencies in all 4 skills around reading, writing, listening, speaking. And reading was kind of the one competency that they weren't sure how they could measure. And engineering applied sciences has a high number of multilingual students, so there were some concerns around performance to those competencies. So this faculty member came to me and said, what can we do? How can I help my students and at the same time measure, how they're progressing towards these standards? And so we built, typically a post-entry language assessment covers all 4 skills. Usually it's focusing on writing, but we shifted it, we adapted it to focus on reading. And so this was a project that it's still going on. It started back in 2020, I think it went live, September 2020. And so this was a great example of, something a faculty member, identified as, I need to work on this area for a number of reasons, sought out our help, and we built this artifact together. And it's still going strong, and they have evidence of performance that they can use not only for accreditation purposes, but the instructor also has evidence to inform their teaching, their pedagogical strategies, how they're designing their curriculum. So it was really a successful collaboration in that sense. And what's great about these artifacts in our series is that participants have the opportunity to continue building them once the series is finished. And one option for them is, continuing to receive ongoing support from the 2 of us here at the Center for educational excellence, but also this can turn into a longer term project with TILT. So TILT is the unit, TILT refers to transforming inquiry into learning and teaching, directed by Sherry Fabian. And so this unit at SFU provides grants and direction for faculty members. Really, it's kind of action research, scholarship into teaching and learning, a lot of self-reflection. So these artifacts, don't just end with the series. They can continue on. And ideally, what we hope faculty members would do with those artifacts, whether they decide to get an inquiry grant through TILT or continue seeking support from us, is that they ultimately use this as a piece of evidence towards teaching effectiveness in their teaching dossier, their portfolio that they use when they are up for promotion and review. So it's really, I think it captures really a tangible way that faculty are seeking out professional development and responding to issues in the class and responding to, making their classrooms more inclusive and accessible. And I think, that's I think one of the great things about our series.
That's fascinating. It's really wonderful because like language education, English as an additional or second language education is my area of interest as well. So I think what you're doing at the center and the workshop that you've developed, it's wonderful. And also, like Eilidh, you mentioned that the idea is not to see multilingual students, multilingual learners from the deficit-oriented approach. Rather, it is to acknowledge the linguistic repertoire that they bring to SFU and contribute to the learning and to the educational community. I think that's wonderful. And it's also a great opportunity for instructors who may not share this expert knowledge in the field of language education, but are willing to help out their students. So I think you're doing a wonderful job. And you have already touched on, actually, you have already answered this question that I was about to ask you, like what actually happens in the workshop? Like, you have already talked about the structure and everything. And Amanda, thanks for bringing up the artifact because it really clarifies what, it gives a clear idea of what happens when somebody attends a workshop. But yeah, my second question is about what actually, like, if I attend the workshop, if I sign up for the workshop, what will I do? What will I learn from attending the workshops? So can you like briefly tell us, because you have already shared what you do in the workshop, but do you think you could tell us some of the strategies or techniques that you apply, you make the instructors do when they attend the workshop?
Thanks. It's a great question. Maybe we'll just hit on some of the main themes of what we do. So at the beginning, we really try to situate our cohort where they are. So we talk about beliefs and positionality in terms of who they think their students are. We share some information about who SFU students are, which sometimes can be surprising to the cohort because, we've all been to university, but some of us, including me, have been to university in the last century. And things change. Our student bodies change. The demographics certainly change. Motivations of students change over time. And we're lucky here at SFU in that we have access to quite a lot of data. So through the IRP, so we share with our cohort some of the data around who our students are, where they come from, as much as we can. And then we also examine the cohort's own sort of ideas around challenges and successes in the classroom, particularly with teaching multilingual students, so that we get a sense of who the cohort are and what their motivations are for joining, why they're there. And we often have really good conversations around that because sometimes we have to listen at first, like all good instructors. We have to listen and get to know who the cohort are and what their needs are. And as we sort of mentioned earlier, sometimes there's a belief that it's other people's job to fix, quote unquote, these students. And so we gently unpack that, what that means, because as I said, there are definitely challenges with teaching in higher education. There are a huge range of different students, so there's the diversity. There are also large class sizes. There are varying degrees of background experiences and competencies within that discipline. So we spent time unpacking that. We talk about what linguistically responsive pedagogy is and what that means. We try to break down any kind of resistance, which isn't often there because these people have chosen to come because they're very caring instructors who want to do a great job with their students. So we're lucky in that sense, in that the motivation is inbuilt. And then we get into talking about strategies for creating linguistically inclusive classrooms. We talk about assessment methods. We talk about reducing linguistic complexity. We share examples sometimes of before and after and how that can be done, particularly in assessments where sometimes language is a barrier to students actually accessing, demonstrating the content and the acquisition of the content, because sometimes the way that questions are formed can be quite convoluted and verbose. And so we aim to sort of support instructors in seeing clear and simple language as a way to help students access the content. And that's often a kind of aha moment. We invite guest speakers, as I mentioned. We give guidance on revising course materials. And we talk about the sort of application of concepts through the artifact development, with the clear understanding that these are not meant to be finished products. It's not really an assignment or an assessment that gets a final grade. It's something that we help support the cohort in starting to arrive at a concept or bringing something that's already in progress and working on that beyond the life of the series. And then our hope is, and this is what we have been doing, is that we establish a relationship with all of the individuals in each cohort, and we continue that relationship after they have gone through the series. And as Amanda talked about, we invite them to perhaps pursue working with Tilt or further developing their artifact, or indeed to come back to the center and speak about their experiences in the series. And it all kind of serves as a way of really consciousness raising, in a way, of what it means to be a linguistically responsive instructor. And of course, there's a lot of crossover and intersections with just good pedagogy in general.
And I think to add to that, as facilitators of this series, it's always fascinating to watch or to see these aha moments play out in real time during the seminar across the 6 sessions that we have, where, I think those first 2 sessions where we're sharing a lot of the data that Eilidh discussed, it really is an aha moment for them. And then when we ask them to do some self-reflection, that's something that I think we're going to be more intentional about in upcoming iterations of the workshop. Just giving them more time to self-reflect as a practitioner, as an instructor, and just seeing them navigate maybe, some challenging situations. In one of the sessions, we talk about assessments, and that's always, it generates a lot of very good discussion. Do you use rubrics? Do you not use rubrics? How detailed are your rubrics? And that depends on individuals. It depends on their context. We don't tend to say there's one way, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. It's very dependent on the faculty members' context. But what we want to do is we want to raise awareness, like perhaps your rubric is a little too punitive. Do you really have to count how many comma splices are, in a paper and deduct them, deduct said amount of points? So I think for us, it's just always fascinating to see how they navigate through the material and what challenges them and what maybe troubles them, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. And so I think in some ways that's enough for us, because we've got them thinking about, oh, maybe I could invite students to use research articles from whatever language they speak. Oh, my colleague here did this and that seemed to do well. Maybe that's something I could do. So as we navigate the various sessions, whether it's case study scenarios, it's always just really, in some ways, joyful to see them go through and perhaps transform might be too strong of a word, but just see how their mindset shifts to whatever. They might be firmer in their original position. They might not be, but it's really great. And I do have to say, I think the participants find the invited speakers, we have one session where we tend to have one or two speakers rather, depending on the cohort. They find those really fruitful because we try to draw from SFU, context from SFU. So we had the Faculty of Education, Joel Hing-Hartsey, come and speak to the group one year, and he gave a really great talk on writing, which is top of mind for a lot of faculty members. And so it's also that peer-to-peer learning that happens in the seminar series. So it's not always us leading it. And I think they appreciate that. And there's a real sense of community that develops with some of the cohort. And you can just see them come together, and we could talk longer than 90 minutes. Some sessions we want to go longer. So it's just interesting to see how people navigate the content and some of the things that we share with them, the literature and that, so forth.
Thanks, Amanda. I also wanted to, because you reminded me that participants also really like when they see what other past cohorts have done in terms of their artifact, because it's very interesting for us to observe faculty members, sometimes very seasoned faculty members, suddenly becoming students, and the vulnerability that they share or that they demonstrate in being a student. And that's such a great, we think, a great experience for them, because as we know, as lifelong learners, it's a really humbling but also very enriching experience to suddenly go from being sort of at the top of the classroom hierarchy to suddenly being somewhere else in that classroom as the student. And we are very transparent and explicit about talking about those feelings and those experiences of being a student, and how you can take that into your role as an instructor and just demonstrate a little bit of understanding, kindness, empathy,
compassion,
patience, compassion, understanding. These students are busy, they're hardworking. Many of them commute for up to 2 hours a day or longer, oftentimes much longer. Some of them are caregivers, some of them are, working almost full-time or part-time. And so it's a great opportunity for everybody in the cohort to have that experience, which I personally think is an experience that we should never let go of. If we're ever in a teaching position, that we should always try and draw on those feelings of and remembrances of being a student and what it's like. I think it makes one a better teacher. And I think all of our cohorts so far have demonstrated those qualities of empathy and understanding and patience. Now, in addition, they have those understandings of, oh, this is maybe what it's like to come meet the requirements of an institution, come from another country, do everything you're supposed to do, and have things to share. And so we're trying to make those pathways to sharing so students can talk about their experiences of a particular concept, for example, a historical concept or a political science concept, through their own lens, and learn about it with a North American lens, but as well celebrating and bringing that experience of their own lens and experience and making those connections, which we know multilingual students are so good at, connecting things and being nimble and fast. For example, with grammar, if you've learned another language, then you're kind of used to that kind of understanding of code and translating that code. And so sharing those moments of being a student or allowing opportunities for those moments of being a student is sort of a kind of unexpected benefit that we've observed with the series, that we try and talk about explicitly as the series ends and instructors go back to their classroom.
Wow, so that's a lot of things happen in the workshop, but it's wonderful. And I think I really agree with you that this is humbling, but at the same time, I think there is a sense of empowerment as well. Both, for the instructors, but for the faculty's part, and maybe the students also, if they see their instructors believing in them and kind of trying to activate, let's say, their multilingual repertoire in their educational journey. I think it's also very empowering for the students, and I really like how you help participants navigate this journey and kind of question their own teaching methodologies and come up with new ideas. That's amazing. So we have got to know what happens in the workshop. This leads to my I think it's time for our third and last question. So we got the perspective of what are the takeaways for the participants. Have you heard back from students or instructors who went back to class and applied some of their learnings from the workshop? And how does this help students? How do the students benefit from this pedagogy?
It's a great question, and something that we continue to examine. We do evaluations with the instructors at the end of the cohort. And we also, throughout the series, we gather qualitative data that we can examine and look at, not just for the series, but also for our own work. So some of the things that participants have noted in the past is that I remember one instructor saying, I know about language barriers. I know that some students might I know that there are language barriers for some students, but what I didn't realize was that I myself might have a role in helping to mitigate those language barriers, that some of those language barriers, in fact, may have been caused by me. So that heightening of, or making an awareness suddenly come to light of, I can actually do something about language, because we know from the literature and from experience that there's a resistance to discipline-specific instructors saying that supporting with language is their role, is their job. Their job is to teach X, biology or science or, economics or whatever, and their role is not to teach language. And one of the challenging things that we're trying to do, and it is challenging, is to have instructors come themselves to a realization that actually, yes, part of their role is to teach language, because we know all students apprentice to the language of their discipline, all of them, regardless of first language. And by implementing some strategies that allow students to learn that language of their discipline, discipline-specific instructors are, in fact, language instructors, and they can play a role in mitigating that barrier for all of their students. And by understanding that it's not just vocabulary, but it's the jargon, it's the language of the discipline, and by opening that door to all of their students, they're not just teaching their students how to communicate in that discipline, but they're inviting them into that community. And we know that a sense of belonging is very important for student success. So that's one way that we think we might have a small impact. Another way is, I think, strategies. So we talk about how instructors can use strategies, sometimes adding elements of fun and play, and just taking a little bit of time, because of course instructors are always worried about time and not having enough time to cover the content. But by taking a step back and taking a breath and thinking about how that content is being taught, might actually be much more beneficial than trying to rush through content in the course of a term. So thinking about strategies, checking in. We talk, as Amanda said, about assessments. So ways that formative and summative assessments can be done so that nobody is surprised by the midterm or by the end of the final exam that, oh, I didn't realize students didn't actually grasp that concept. So ways of doing that also benefit students, because then both the instructor and the students can see how they're progressing towards the outcomes of the course.
And I think, like, speaking anecdotally, in kind of follow-up conversations we've had with some faculty members who've gone through the program, especially those who've come back to present what they've done. Anecdotally, we've heard that students have been quite open and embracing to, especially those in classrooms where the instructor has opened up assignments to incorporate journal articles published in whatever language the students can speak, and taking a very and having an element of trust between the instructor and student, that the student will represent the material as close to the original as possible. So we've heard anecdotally that students appreciate the opportunity to maybe do some of their coursework in a language that they might be more comfortable with. Interestingly, though, some faculty members have told us that students aren't necessarily versed in the academic discourse of, say, engineering in their first language they speak. So it's an interesting, it's not a dilemma, but it's just something interesting. And some students might not choose to take up the opportunity of, drawing on resources from whichever language they like, because they haven't been kind of encultured into that discourse. And so I think as we look ahead, there's some obstacles when we talk about measuring the impact of the series. Obviously, we have a direct line, if you will, to our participants, and we have evaluation forms, assessment forms. But this is something that is we're having a lot of conversation about right now, looking longitudinally into, like, what is the actual impact of this series, not only on faculty's members' teaching effectiveness or their mindset around teaching multilingual learners, but how does that actually impact student performance in the classroom? And so I think people listening to this podcast can appreciate the challenges of measuring and evaluating program impact. And so that's something we're exploring. We do encourage, faculty members, instructors to actually, maybe do an informal survey or exit ticket around a particular, like, if they do have an assignment that was the artifact, like, collect students' thoughts about it. We'd love to hear about that. So that's something we're trying to focus on. It would be great if there was a robust way to measure that impact. And, we're looking at potential course of experience surveys that the students fill out. There might be opportunities for faculty members to include specific questions around maybe linguistically responsive teaching strategies that they've done in the classroom. But that's looking into the future, and the student impact, kind of getting that really robust data. But anecdotally, we're hearing positive things from instructors. And I would say, looks like some students are open to it, but it's still a little bit of a mystery how students are experiencing that in the classroom.
Wow, wonderful. This is really great work you are doing, and all the very best for your project. And this has been a delightful conversation. I'm very grateful to you two for joining us today and share your project, your ideas with ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Appreciated the time.
Listeners, I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. And if you'd like to know more about the linguistically responsive pedagogy and classroom management, workshop assessment, whatever you want to know, please visit CEA's workshop. You may even want to sign up for the workshop to know more. So thank you so much for staying with ideas, for supporting ideas, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you all.